All right, let's get going. Let's get going. So this week, a little bit different. No review of the week. Instead, we're going to do
Hmm.
30-day challenge stuff. So we are 1 week into the 30-day challenge. Super excited. I've been just so inspired by people rallying behind this and jumping in. So hopefully you're plugged in. If not, jump into the Journey of a Christian Dad Facebook page, ask for info, check it out, check out the videos, check out just whatever's happening. If you're already plugged in, thanks for being plugged in, and thank you for encouraging others. If you haven't posted something, post something. Like just your spirit and your energy is going to help somebody else. So whether you're having great success or you're failing in an area, put it out there and let people encourage others by their stories. Speaking of stories,
Can I jump in real quick?
you
I,
can.
on that 30-day challenge, it's many people, as you know, doctor, when I kind of give, recommendations or this, and I'll get to it, I'll work at it. That calendar that you have, even though it reads the first of the month, if somebody were to pick up that 30-day challenge and it's the 12th could be your first of the month.
Exactly.
Right. And so you don't have to wait for the month. I'll get to it. Just go and make that 30 days. Start on the 12th and then loop it all the way around. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So don't wait. I mean, do it now.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. So I'll get to the introduction in a second, but that's a great point. So start on whatever day you pick this up, start on that day. So if it's the 12th, start on the 12th and just go with the pack. And that way you can be in sync with everybody. And then you can catch up on the rest after the fact. But do start on the day that you pick up on it. So if it's the 12th, if it's the 14th, just go with the flow. So that was awesome. That was a first. Been doing this for a while now, and we always run into first. So that was the first time we had the guest just go before I even introduced him. So with that said, let me introduce Dr. Eddie Weller. Obviously, he's a doctor with the name Dr. Eddie Weller. He's an entrepreneur, family man, man of God, seeker. And on top of all that, one of the reasons why I'm just super excited to have him here with us, in addition to just being a genuine guy, a guy that I turn to quite often, is that he's a storyteller. So I bring that up because you're going to hear some fantastic stories, I'm quite certain. And storytelling is a skill that I like to pass along, especially to my kids. But I try to encourage everybody to ask great questions of themselves and others, and also figure out a way to become a storyteller through story. That's how people learn quite a bit. I know you all know it's in the Bible. You read the parables. Yeah. So through parables, people learn. Jesus taught that way. So, let her rip. Eddie, welcome to the show.
It's an absolute art, you know what I mean, to do that. And I think what we do is, as storytellers, of people who speak on stage like you and I do, is we want to be like they. We want to tell a story like they. And nobody can tell your own story because it was your own experience. So just share your own experience, and the experience turns into a story.
Absolutely.
So I think that's where people stop comparing and just be the best you and share your own gig. You know what I mean? So it's when we're on stage, you're playing your music, nobody can play like you because you're touching your own instruments. You know what I mean? So that's how I look at it. And ever since, it's always been easy for me. Based on different personality types of who we are as men, is a lot of guys can't go on stage. They feel a little weird with that. Cool, you don't have to. Your stage can be one-on-one at a coffee shop with a friend.
Absolutely.
That's the stage. I enjoy the stage. I like the spotlight. It's kind of fun. It puts my back against the wall saying you can't. And so it's, again, you have to just kind of share your own story. And I think the biggest problem with all of the titles as we get introduced to doing different things, you're a doctor, you're this, you're that, we all do that through our own experiences. I experienced school, 11 years of college, and he became a doctor. It was just an experience. And with that, you get a piece of paper. I also experienced the things called I do, and that turned me into a husband. I also experienced, I delivered my wife, I delivered my children. And I became a dad. That was an experience. So with those experiences, again, we share that moment, and that moment turns into a story.
For the guys that just jumped into the I can't tell a story, here's how you can. Just grab one or two stories that impacted you in a way, and then practice telling the stories.
Yeah.
And maybe tell somebody, hey, I'm working on getting better at telling this story. I call them signature stories, and you just need a couple. And once you get good at telling those stories and they have the impact, and shorten them down,
Sure.
Get them set up, get your enunciations, get your punchline, get it all set. But once you get good at them once or twice, you'll be able to start repeating that skill over and over and over again. But you don't need all that many stories to be impactful and deliver the lesson that
Sure.
you'd like to be able to share with somebody. So you matter, your experiences matter, and you owe it to yourself and especially the other men to
Yeah.
share those signature stories. So
And
enough on that.
I think it's, Dan, I think if guys were to go to iamsecond.com,
Yes.
it's a great way to see people who are celebrities or athletes, all these different people tell their story. And it's a one-on-one, camera quiet, no interview, and they just share. And it's really cool. And after you watch a bunch of them, put up a camera by yourself, which is on your phone, and record you telling a story as you look at the camera, and then watch that again. And then, oh, I need to change that, and watch that again. And next thing you know, you start flying with your story.
Yes.
The story is really not for you. The story is for you to impact somebody else's life so they can now learn through their own experiences of experiencing yours with you via the story that they can overcome, they can endure, they can move on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So just before we came on camera, you were talking about an image you saw of yourself 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Can you retell that story again?
Oh, it's funny. Yeah. Well, it's again, Facebook, when I talk about Facebook all the time, and it's everything, pops up on the image, and it's like, oh, this was you 3 years ago or 7 years ago. Here's a memory. We all get those as they're tracking all of us, right? So we all get those. And so when I see that popped on up, it was my wife and I on a beach on an anniversary. And so we took a picture on the beach, and friends taking a picture, and right, you do the whole thing. And I'm standing next to her. I'm like, wow, like, who is that dude? Because the guy that I'm looking like today, physically, I should say, looking like today, is a night and day human. And so again, we get stuck, and I'm older today, and I'm more built today, in better shape today. And I wasn't ever heavy, just on the thinner side of myself. And so again, when you start taking care of you in a different, physically, emotionally, spiritually, nutritionally, relationally, all of a sudden you start seeing things that pop up in your life like, I can't believe I used to think that way. I used to look that way, or I used to either dress that way or that. It's just an evolution of our story.
Usually when guys go, when I look back 4 years ago, gosh, I can't believe how fat I was.
Yeah.
Instead, your wife said, what did your wife say?
My wife said, yeah, she goes, look at your arms. I'm like, I know, I look like Tweety Bird, right?
So this was the opposite. This was
right.
the opposite.
Now it's like a total game changer, So I've been working out at this place, and once a week, and he's getting in shape, and so it's just been nuts, and literally once a week. But it's just been a game changer. So I also think about, if it's once a week and I want to change my diet, then why don't you change your diet one day of the week? All you have to do is start with one. It's the first step. And then if you can do one day, then maybe I can do two.
Mm-hmm.
I say the same thing with guys with prayer. A lot of guys have a disconnect with a religious prayer, because if God knows everything, what I mean by that is, if God knows everything, why are you telling God what God already knows? A relationship prayer is why don't you tell your problem how big God is? And now that shifts. And now all of a sudden you're like, you feel the righteousness of Christ. You're like, we got this, dude. Let's go. I got God by my side. Problem, you got nothing on me. And then there was a shift. That happened with me in 2003. 2003, my accountant calls me up and says, Eddie, you paid $26,000 in taxes this year. You owe another 19. And I was like, what? Like what? And he goes, yeah, it's due in a week. Like, you're killing me right now. And so I am tapped. I spent all my money, all that stuff in business. And I took my checkbook, literally whipped it on the floor. And I threw some bombs at God. And I got hot. I didn't have the relationship like I did today. Right? We evolved. And I'm like, what's up? I'm not taking. I am serving. I am doing the best I can. What is going on? Why am I getting raked over the coals? And then that shift, it just hit me, Dan. It hit me. And I said, Eddie, it's not about God, man. It's about that problem. God, I apologize. I want to put a smile on your face. And that's when my motto shift. On that day, it totally shifted, where I want to wake up every day putting a smile on God's face. That's it. That's my motto. Where you're like, what do you live by? What's your motto? I want to put a smile on God's face. So it doesn't matter what the activity is. I want to put a smile on God's face. And so with that, I took that checkbook. I'm like, yeah, whipped it on the ground. Let's go. The following day, I got challenged. I got a summons in the mail. I'm getting sued by Citibank. I had
Oh,
52, I had
no.
$52,000 in credit card debt. I consolidated all my credit cards so I didn't lose my credit, right? So I
Right.
consolidated all my cards, making monthly payments to this consolidation company. They disperse the payments to the 4 credit cards that I owe money to. So I'll slowly pay it off over years, but I don't have to close the account and lose my credit. Citibank calls or sends me a summons in the mail. I'm getting sued. I call up Citibank, says, we haven't received a payment, Eddie, in 13 months. I call the consolidation company. There's no company. They scammed me for $18,000. No payments were made. And so now my credit score goes to 425, right? 425 plummets, and I'm getting sued. Now I owe the IRS money, and now I'm getting sued. I'm $52,000 for the lawsuit total, and now I owe Uncle Sam 14 G's or 19 grand. And so I'm like, all right, I had a conversation with you yesterday. Are you pushing me right now? Like, what's up? And so it was, long story short, in 90 days, in less than 90 days, when I met with my attorneys and the other attorneys, in less than 90 days, I stroked a check for the $19,000 I owed IRS and the $52,000 I owed the credit card company in less than 90 days. And I'm like, my family's like, how did you pull that off? I don't know. But I told God about my problem, and I told my problem how big my God was. And I said, God, use me. You want me to take care of that? I'm not taking the system right now. I'm not a scammer. I don't play that card. You want me to do that? It's on. Use me. I dare you. Oh, he did. And I took that and I rocked it. And the business went crazy. Things went nuts. And God brought more people in my life, business life. It was nuts. It was nuts. Out of debt, nothing, zero. I haven't had a credit card since 2003. Everything's been
unreal.
Yeah, it was just a crazy story. And so, again, that story, right? Somebody else is sitting at home going, I'm in debt right now, but I'm not 52,000 in debt, in credit card debt, right? And so, again, the numbers are irrelevant because on the dollar bill, it reads, in God we trust. Do you? Because it's just a piece of paper. So if you need more of that, then just keep being you and God will provide it. It just happens. It's the faith move, right? It's the faith move. You got to have it.
So you were talking finances a second ago. So with that, we're all going to have a major financial crisis around every 10 years. Something's going to show up in our life in a really big financial impact kind of a way.
Sure.
Whatever that may be. It may be a health crisis. It may be a credit card thing. It may be a tax, whatever it is, but
Something's going to happen.
Something's going to punch you in the gut about every 10 years.
Yeah.
And then you get to choose what happens next.
Well, it's your perception on that. So I got 2 stories with that, if you don't mind.
Yeah. Go. That's exactly where I'm going with this.
I'm in my backyard, and I sit on my patio with my wife. I'm having a glass of wine, just chilling, and we've got no rabbits running around, as we all do, and squirrels. And I'm watching this one squirrel go up and down nonstop, just up and down. And I'm like, look at this thing go. And for like 2 months, I'm watching this, and it's getting sticks and leaves, and it makes a huge nest in a tree in my backyard. I'm like, cool. So I'm just chilling. Now it's done. He's going, hanging out in a nest, right? Or she, I don't know, right? Going in the, squirrel's going in there, hanging out, running up and down, just doing its thing, but it's done building the nest because it's no longer building it. It's completed. Ding dong. My dog goes crazy. Doorbell rings. I look on, go to the front door. It's Amarin. Hi, we're here to trim your trees. So Amarin walks into my backyard and says, we have a permit to take down 2 trees in your backyard. And one of them is that squirrel's tree. Even animals have issues, people. And so I'm sitting there, I'm like, this poor guy right now, what is this squirrel? So he calls out, because they're down there, chainsaws. So they go down, right, and he's smashing all my plants and flowers, and I'm watching these guys. I'm like, dude, I just did my backyard. It looks nice. They don't care. And so there's squirrels. I'm sitting down. It's mid-afternoon, and this squirrel's sitting on the fence with its rear looking like this, just looking on the fence, and he's looking up, and it goes, boom, and that tree goes down. And I look over at that squirrel, and the squirrel's like, huh, okay. And just watching the squirrel gets off the fence, runs over to its fallen house that's laying on the grass now, right? Kind of sniffs around, and I swear to you, Dan, stands up on his hind legs, looks up, grabs a stick, and climbed up another tree and starts building a new nest.
Immediately.
It didn't need a GoFundMe page. It didn't need any anxiety, depression meds. It didn't need a Facebook page to say, everybody, will you pray for me? It just did, right? You just do what you do. And if you can own that and be depressed, that squirrel can go hang out with another squirrel's nest, or he can build his own. He built another one. You know, that's the beauty of that. And I think we just need to keep on. We just don't stop. We're going to have things. COVID happens, right? This pandemic. So the pandemic goes and this COVID thing goes, and I'm in my office seeing patients, and I turn in my office, if you've been there, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I hear on the floor. I'm like, what is that? And there is a ripple, like waves about this high of water coming into my office, and my office is flooding. I'm like, wow, like pick up the computers. Like they're on the floor, like, you know what I mean? So I get all that, tell my patients, grab your life preserver. We got to get out of here. This whole floor is about to go in water. And so everybody gets on out. I'm close 2 months of 2020, 2 months, and start this non-for-profit that maybe we'll share a little bit, right? Start this non-for-profit. In the meantime, all this stuff that's happening, and I'm closed for 2 months, not seeing any patients, and I'm doing my gig, and it's ripping out drywall, tearing out carpet, gutted my office. 1, 2, 3 times my office flooded, right? And that's nuts until we finally figured out what it was. However, my accountant calls me, says, Eddie, we got a problem. I said, what's going on? Your income has doubled in 2020. 2019, you're doing great. You just doubled in 2020. You were closed for 2 months. You're open 10 months. And how did you doubled your income? How did that happen? I don't know, man. I just give credit to where credit's due. Let me tell you how things work in this world. And so again, if you have faith, you can own the flood or you can own the abundance. And that's,
I don't know if you know, is your accountant Christian?
no, I don't think he is.
Okay.
I don't.
What a powerful story that is to take that.
Right.
You know, he's a number cruncher, and here something impossible just happened. What did you do? What are you responsible for?
Something logically just happened on paper that doesn't make sense in the real world, because everybody else is losing their shirt, Eddie, and your business is doubling. Help me here. And I said, well, you can focus on the problem, you can focus on the solution. I focused on the solution. You know what I mean? And when you do that, then people are like, oh, what are you attracting in the world? It's not what you're attracting, it's what you're being. Christ didn't focus on people's sicknesses. He saw them get up, walk, let's go. He didn't think about all the things that were wrong in the world. He says, we got this. Christ is sitting in the bow of the boat, and the boat's rocking. Everybody's like, hold on. Jesus is sleeping. And he gets up and he says, seas, be calm. That's how it works. And so again, if we have that in us,
we have that in us. Cross on the background.
Yeah, that cross came from a prison where inmates make crosses when they find Christ in jail.
That's awesome.
And that raises, they sell them to raise money for their ministry in prison.
So funny story. Todd Stottlemyre was on the podcast in the past, the baseball pitcher, and his dad was Mel Stottlemyre, famous pitcher for the Yankees and pitching coach. And they were out in the mountains, massive snowstorm, just terrible thing. And they're in this like mobile home type thing. And the boys wake dad up. Dad, this is terrible. The storm, the wind, the noise, we're going to die.
Yeah.
And dad wakes up just for a second. He goes, just go back to sleep. It's going to happen, whatever's going to happen. And the difference is I'm going to get a good night's sleep when I wake up in the morning. And you guys are going to feel terrible.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's just like Jesus in the boat. Like, we got this. We're either going to die or we're going to live. Like, why worry?
It really comes down to a choice. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It really comes down to a choice. It's no different than what you put on television. Click a button and you have a totally different thing that you're watching. It's really just a shift in your viewing and what you're choosing to have in your life. It's really that easy, you know? So I have a gentleman that texted me last night, 2:30 in the morning, and he's like, I can't get away from porn. I'm like, you want to know why you can't get away? And he's like, okay, we're going back and forth, 2:30 in the morning. And I said, that's why. You just said you can't. Tell me what you can do. And I said, so you can tell me that you can take care of yourself, but you're taking care of yourself in the wrong way. And so it was just a shift. You know, he's like, man, you're making me feel bad. You're the one that texted me.
Yeah.
You felt guilty enough to text me to keep you accountable. Says, I can't get away from this. Let me help you do this. And this is a guy that's like a big fish here in town that goes to, the church. and people
Mm-hmm.
know this guy.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
he and I kind of keep each other accountable. And so he does with business, I do with him in a personal life and a spiritual life. And so it's, again, almost like an, Operation Paul or Operation Timothy kind of thing. You know what I mean? So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. So we all need a Paul in our life, somebody to help teach us some things. We all need a Timothy in our life that we can transfer our knowledge to and help them up. And
Sure.
we all need a Barnabas in our life, somebody to just ride or die with us and be there right there with us
Yeah.
as we go
Yeah.
through life. So
The Braveheart moment. You know what I mean? Like, I got your back. I'm not going anywhere.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We got to surround ourselves. We can't do life
Sure.
as the lone wolf, that's for sure.
Sure.
So when you're in your personal life or professional life, what are some challenges you see that guys have just over and over and over again? You already mentioned the porn one, and we all
Sure.
know that that's a massive one that's out there.
It
Is there
is.
something else that guys just trip over relentlessly?
I'm a big fan of the Weather Channel. Growing up, there were two TVs in my house. So we had the cooking channel. My parents make food you can't spell, right? They love cooking together. So the cooking channel was on and the Weather Channel was on. And I teach my life, seminars and patients and my family. I'm all about the Weather Channel, traffic and weather on the 8s, constant updates. And I think we get stuck in the minutia of life to where women, once they have children, make the children number one and their husbands number two. And it's just the default how God made that, right? Because they're there to nurture and we provide in very different ways. And so I think if we had somewhere like your calendar, right? The challenges, when do you
Yeah.
have 30 minutes of family time? But when do you have 30 minutes or 10 minutes of us time about what I need? And so we all have a different love language. And if it's really one of them, I enjoy touch. I love a hug and I love an Adrian. I love an Adrian. Like, you got this. Go. Win, Eddie. Go. Yeah, when that happened, I got an Adrian. You know what I mean? And I'm the one, right? And so if I'm not married to an Adrian, I'm like, where do I get that from then? I have other
Right.
people in my life that are my Adrians, right? So we need those things versus having a little bit of resentment towards your spouse because you are not providing according to my expectations. Hold on a second. Weather Channel. The expectation is traffic and weather on the 8s. They don't care what you think, how you think, what chaos is in your life. That Weather Channel on the 8s gives you an update of weather. Do you have that in your relationships? And I think I do that in a business relationship, male relationships, female relationships, my spouse, right? We're surrounded by relationships. And I think the biggest disconnect, Dan, is the lack of ability to communicate because we're afraid what the other's going to think. And so I'm a huge fan of hand on the heart. Can I
Yep.
share something with you? You know what I mean? It's kind of like when somebody says, hey, man, I'm moving next week. Can you help me? Nobody likes helping anybody move. Moving sucks, right? And you can't, I don't want to do that. So a friend of mine had taught me years ago, when anybody asks you, says, I'd love to help you. He said, Eddie, take out your wallet, take out $100 bill and hand it to them and say, hey, I would like to pay for somebody on my behalf that can help you move that would be better suited. And so now it frees you up. You don't have to say no. And so it's a little trick, guys. It works great. But I can't afford to get injured. I'm injured. I can't see patients.
So that's true. In your case, yeah, absolutely true.
You know what I
So on my side, a long time ago, a college buddy of mine's like, hey, when people move, and in college, everybody moves like every 3 months, it seems like. It's
Sure.
like, always help them move. That way you got people to help you move, and nobody ever shows up on moving day and that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
I actually always try to show up. As adults now, nobody ever lets you know when moving day is, and they always say no and they refuse your help, at least the people I know.
Sure.
So it was a little over 3 years ago. I show up in this guy's garage and I just start moving boxes and blend in with the moving company.
Yeah.
He shows up like an hour later cleaning out his old house and he's like, hey, uh, you're not one of the movers. What are you doing? I'm like, you told me you didn't need help.
Yes. Right.
And he looked and he goes, I was wrong. And turns out he was. There was a major crisis happening. He wasn't there. He's taking care of the old house, and his wife was, and she was overwhelmed by all the stuff she had to do. And she's breaking down in tears while he was away taking care of what he was supposed to take care of. And he was unaware. I'm like, dude, you just need another set of eyes around to help manage. And he goes,
And it's just that extra. I mean, that's exactly. I also used to work at UPS back in the day. And so I used to load trucks. So when people move, I stay in the truck and I can load. I don't load it where you ramp it down. No, I load it where the walls are square. And
yeah.
So my problem is I'm so darn particular is that I have a certain way I want to do it. I'm like, I I got it. And the problem is then I'm doing all of
Yeah.
it. I'm like,
Yeah. I like that game of Tetris. That's fun.
right. Yeah.
Real life Tetris. So you were talking about the wives and then they kind of go towards the kids and shift their focus. Where do the guys shift their focus? You also mentioned Adrian. I've got somewhere to go with it if you don't, but where do the
Sure.
guys shift their focus?
To it. That it could be work where I make more money, that it could be porn, could be sports, could be my own hobby. It could be maybe I'm living my failed life through my children and I didn't make it on the team, my kid's going to, right? And so they find an it as a void where they're really not addressing the problem. And so I think per the Weather Channel, they're focusing more on the commercials than the actual weather, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, and I think that's the problem is that when you stop living your life through others and you just be the man that God created you to be, most guys don't know what that means. And it's there's too many boys out there and not enough men. And so I didn't become a man till I was 28 years old. I was a doctor at 26. I wasn't a man until 28. True story. And a woman turned me into a man. She called me out, right? We found Christ together. We got baptized together. It was nuts. And I don't know how we didn't end up together. It was just interesting. But again, God had a plan. And how things snowballed, you make your choices and experiences. And I'm not going to regret that because I am the husband who I am because of this woman, because of Christ bond together. So it's a stepping stone. And I think all of us can reflect on our yesterday. The problem is we take yesterday's pain into tomorrow's pleasure, right?
Yes.
And when we do that, what happens is we never live a life of enough. And so one day I'll get in shape. One day I'll have enough money. One day we'll have a relationship. One day we'll have a house we want. One day, and there's never a one day because you're never in the present. And nor are you not only in the present, you're never in appreciation. So for case in point, today's Tuesday. Today's Gratitude Tuesday. Gratitude Tuesday today. And so I'm getting Weller's 7 days of success. On today, we call it Gratitude Tuesday. So I make a phone call, or I write a text message, an email, or a card. I've got thank you cards in my book, and I write cards to 3 people why I'm grateful for them in my life on Tuesdays. And so that's just the theme of how I do, the day of the week. So I always have something. It could be your spouse, could be your kids, could be a coworker, could be somebody you bumped into at a grocery. It doesn't matter why you're grateful for them. And I think when you do that, then you stay in the present, Stan. You know what I mean? I think Christ was key at that. He was always in the now, always in the now. Even in the last moment, when he looked at the guy, the thief, and he looked at him, he was in the present. He's like, brother, I accept you, man. Let's go for a ride. We're going to go. You're joining me. And the other one didn't. It was choice. It was straight up choice.
So talking about gratitude, funny story. There was a guy goes into a post office and he had been told to compliment people. Every store you go into, whenever you're with the person that's helping you or supposed to help you, compliment them. Yeah. Well, he goes in the post office, he waits in the long line and gets up to the totally gnarly woman, just angry, negative. She'd been treating every customer in line in front of him like inhuman people, just tearing them apart. And he gets up there and he's like, oh, I got to give her a compliment. She's ugly. Her breath stinks. She's mean and nasty. And takes a deep breath and he's wondering what's going to come out of his mouth. And he goes, hi, I really like your earrings. She picks her head up, looks at him like he's a real person and smiles real big. She's got just a few teeth though.
Yeah.
And she says, oh, wow, thank you. How can I help you today?
Yep. State breaker. Yeah.
Game changer.
Yeah.
She became personable and helpful. The person behind him got a good experience. And somehow he found a genuine way to compliment her in a very difficult situation.
Right.
There wasn't much to compliment.
Right. According to us.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I have a friend of mine, and he decided to take his life when he was 41. He was a fireman. And he literally put a rifle up to his face and went and survived. And so he is incredibly disfigured. Didn't have God in his life. Now he's crazy for God. On Joy FM and 99.1, he's done the 99 seconds to
99
joy.
seconds to joy, yeah.
So he's done all that. He can't smell. He lost his nose. He lost his tongue. He can't taste. So he gets, it's just crazy. He can't see, he's blind, went through the optic chiasm, lost his eyesight. So he can't see, he can't smell, he can't taste, but he can hear like no other, right? His senses are sharp. Super cool dude. He's a lot of fun. He's always cracking up. And so he comes into the office and we chit chat, and every time he hears a woman's voice, it's all perception, right? Every time he hears a woman's voice, he's like, "Doc," and he's like, "Doc, doc," right? Because of his tongue. And I can understand him just fine.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Is that her?" And so when he says, "Is that her?" Does she have every woman he sees with his blind eyes as he hears them? They all have red hair and green eyes. Every woman. And so it just so happened one day when he was in, there is a woman that I take care of that she's tall, she had long red hair and straight up green eyes, like emerald green. And I sit next to her and I introduce him, right? She's married, whatever. But I said, "You have to meet my friend." And so they shake hands. And I said, "You're holding her hand. And I promise you, she has red hair and green eyes." This dude was shaking. But again, it was all based on, right? It was awesome. But it was all based on thought. And it's all based on perception. I can't see, I can't hear. I could be lying to him.
Right.
But it was all based on thought. So when you wake in the morning, what are the thoughts that you're starting your day with? And I think a lot of people go, again, yesterday's pains, I got to go to work today. You don't have to go to work. You get to go to work, right? And so when I look at it, I get to pray with my family. I get to go. I get to sit in traffic. You don't have to sit in traffic. Quit your job. Do something else. If you think about, you get to do that. I mean, think about, there was a lady came to the office yesterday and she's like, "Gosh, traffic's pissing me off." I'm like, "How?" Because the person next to you singing in the car. So if traffic's pissing you off, it would piss everybody off. But it's your perception. And so I remember my wife and I at the grocery store a year into marriage, no kids yet. And this woman, it's a young girl, maybe 20, 21, maybe, at the grocery store. It's packed. Everybody's checking out, right? This is way back. And she's bloop, 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 right? And just, tossing items to the bagger, just head down. I'm like, "Wow." And she's like, "What?" I go, "Are you okay?" She's like, "I just don't want to be here." "Cool, then leave." She's like, "I can't. I get out of here at 5:00. I'm, no. I'll make it really easy for you. What's your name?" I see her name tag. Amy, I got this. No big deal. And my wife's like, "Oh God." Right?
This is real life, folks. This is real life. This is not a real funny story.
Yeah, no, not story.
True.
And so, because my wife lives with the seminar, right? And so I'm like, "Here we go." I mean, the grocery store, every aisle is packed, cashiers. "Amy's quitting today!" Scream across the store. "Amy's quitting. She's outie. Goner," right? And I'm just loud. And she's like, "Sir, sir, sir." And the manager comes on over, right? I don't know, his name's Mark, right? So the guy comes on over and he goes, "Is everything wrong here?" I'm ecstatic right now. He's like, "Why? What's going on?" I said, "I was just so excited. Amy was just telling me how much she loves working at this grocery store. And she's just in here and she's got a smile on her face. I want to thank you, Mark, for hiring people like Amy." Right? It was a game changer. She went, "Oh my God, I'm going to get in trouble." To where? He's like, "Amy, good work. Thank you so much." And walks away. And she's like, "Oh my God, don't do that again." I go, "Amy, this isn't Russia. You got a choice to be here. You filled out the application. Per your application, they hired you based on your requirements and characteristics. You're all in. You made it and they hired you. So smile. You don't have to be here. You chose to be here." And then that from there, and my wife's like, "Oh God, here we go," right? Putting the groceries in the bag. And so again, it's all based on perception of choice. I don't have to be on this podcast with you.
Right? You do not.
No.
I'm not paying you.
I get to be here. And so it's that kind of thing where why not enjoy that moment? I worked out this morning. I did 5 other things. I was cleaning my windows in my house at 6:15 this morning. Why? Because I got up early. I'm like, what am I going to do here? Well, the windows are smudged. I got a dog and my kiddos touch the glass. Drives me crazy. So instead of complaining about it, guys, just fix it. Right? So many guys are like, "Oh, look at this is done. That needs to be done. I got to do everything around here." I clean more than my wife. Because why? I find enjoyment in it. I like a clean home. If you come to see my office sometime, anybody, it's clean. I clean it. They don't have a cleaning crew. I'm cleaning crew. Call me Edna. I'm the cleaning crew. Right? Because if you don't like something, change it. And if you can't change it, just don't do it. And so that's how I like to live my life. And if we do that, now there's no resentment, there's no regret, there's no this. However, we get stuck in relationships sometimes to where we're starting to do this. And we really become roommates. And so I'm writing a book on relationships. And one of the chapters is the new high school relationship. Today's new high school relationship is, once my kids graduate high school,
Mm-hmm.
I'm out.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so I see that very, very, very daily. I absolutely talk to couples daily about it. And I coach a bunch of couples and kind of help them relationships. And you know, even me talking to my wife, like, do you need me around? Do you really need me here? Do you want me here? What do you like about me? What do you dislike about me? Remember the Weather Channel? You know, so they're thinking stuff. I don't like carpet. I don't sweep any of my stuff under the carpet. Right. So I want it, let it be exposed so you get it on out. And I think of when we have that communication, most of us have a couch in our house. And a lot of houses have love seats. They have a sofa and a love seat. They call it a love seat because you have to sit next to each other. So why don't you have that 10 minutes where you can sit next to one another and say, hey, I gotta get something off my chest. Or can I just tell you how much I love you and I appreciate you? Instead of barking all the time, I'm a big fan. Gentlemen, hear me out. Praise, correction, praise. I love when you do this. Do you think we might be able to do this? Thank you again for doing this. Praise, correction, praise. It opens up a conversation and leaves it in a good note. It's kind of like I play golf frequently. And my son is in a junior PGA, so that's why I play golf frequently. And so when I go and we play, we go to the driving range. He'll hit the balls, right? He's hitting them decent. He makes a few oops shots, right? We all do. But if he mishits the last ball, we don't leave the driving range. You don't leave on a bad note. We do that with relationships. We get frustrated. Oh, fine, whatever. And walk out of the room. And when you walk out of the room, you're walking away from her. That's not the man who she married. You pursued her. You got her to say, I do. And all of a sudden you won't? That's on us, guys. So I am a huge fan of touting why divorce is so prevalent is because of the male, not the female. And so, yes, we can grow apart, but if you're always pursuing her, he keeps her on her A game. Heck, when somebody gets divorced, what happens? They get in crazy shape. They start taking care of themselves again. Everything. Why wouldn't you do that together? So my wife, she works out. I work out. We go to a similar place to go work out. She likes to feel good. I like to feel good. I like to be attracted to her. She likes to be attracted. See how this works? How much money is enough? Most guys don't do that. How much money is like, I arrived, I'm there. There's a guy that came to my office, Dan. I call a spade a little bit, right?
Yes,
so this guy comes to my office and he sits down, big dude, really big dude, gets referred to me. And he sits down and his arms crossed like this. I'm like, wow, you're that guy. I just walked in. He doesn't know, he knows of me. I walk in the room, I go to shake hands, right, like this. And he's sitting like this. I'm like, hi, wow, you're that guy. He says, why? Because can you drop your arms for me? Like, let me in a little bit. Like, why the wall? Do you do that at home? I know you do it at work. So your business, I've learned a little bit about your business. You do pretty well, like really well. And your business, you've got several hundred employees and you're making money and you're a big guy. And so you're doing all this stuff. I haven't met your wife, but would you consider her a trophy? She plastic up top? Like, could you consider a trophy? She works out, she stays home, you give her all the money she wants. Are you that guy? And so talking to him, he's like, who the hell are you? I'm just trying to figure you out right now because you like your wife and you desire your wife, right? Yeah. You look down, sir. You can't see your genitals. What makes you think your wife wants to see them? This dude got hot. I said, man, I want to help. My name's Eddie Weller. I run a program called Getting Weller. Healthy mind, healthy relationship. You have a toxic relationship right now because your wife's a prostitute. She's also a nanny. Because she takes care of your kids, she takes care of the house, and she takes care of you physically. That sounds like made the nanny and the prostitute. That's a chapter in my book. It was after this guy that I met. And I said, so we can fix that, want to change your relationship, or you can go on, make your $2 million a year, and then you'll die of something because your health's going to crap, and then your wife will have all that money and find some other guy she really wants to be with. Or you can change that right now. Do you want to play my game? He's like, wow, I thought this was a chiropractic office. Yeah, I know. We talk a lot of things here. And so again, with that, when I talk with people, we don't get so stuck in our thing where it becomes our why versus as a man, that's just part of the puzzle, but we lose ourselves. In the center of our life is us. And then we have our friends, our family, our relationships, our hobbies, all of these different things. When we lose our health and when we lose our wealth, either one of those, We take our health or wealth and put that in the center of our life. I can't eat this because I have that. I can't go on vacation because I have that. I can't do that, right? We do that with our health. And I can't wear those clothes because I don't have enough of this. I can't drive that car because I can't live there. See, health and wealth's identical. It's identical. And what's so interesting to me that maintaining is much easier than regaining, right? Once I get in debt, it's hard to get out of debt and then start making money. So don't get in debt to make money. This is why doctors are failing left and right now, because they're so buried in debt, they can't get out and they end up doing something else. It's the same thing with, with finances and your health. You get so overweight and sick and toxic and just your lifestyle is toxic that in order to lose the weight, I call gaining shape, in order to lose the weight and then get in the shape that you want, that takes time. So isn't it so funny? It's really easy to get in debt fast and it's really easy to get sick fast. It's hard to do the other way around.
It sure is.
Right?
It sure
but once you
is.
arrive, what's that number? How much money is enough, gentlemen? Is it where you're like, man, I'm good? Because during the COVID, right, office income doubled, that kind of thing. With that, I started, kids were homeschooled, so I was doing, art with my kids. I was doing gym class, and I was doing math, right? So I was doing all that with the kiddos, and we start doing these huge murals, sidewalk art. From the murals, I meet a gentleman in Pakistan, young guy, he's 19, crazy for Christ, and he and I got really, really, really close. I started a non-for-profit called Clay. I purchased, literally
What was the name again?
chalktoclay.com.
Thank you. It chopped for a second, so I want to make sure we got chalktoclay.com in there.
It started with sidewalk chalk to clay brickyards in Pakistan.
And that sidewalk chalk picture was amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, there's a bunch of them. And you'll see them on the website. I'm putting more up now. So the house, I decided to purchase 19 children out of slavery, orphaned. I'm now dad. It's nuts. I talk to these kids like 4 or 5 times a week. It's craziness. And so they just sent me clothes, right? Pakistan, all these different Pakistani clothes. I'm wearing it in the office on Thursday, by the way.
Awesome.
And so it's so fun. But with that, I've decided to build a church, a school, and a home. Ready, gentlemen? My wife's not on board that much at all. Not her.
So your wife's a 0 out of 100 on this project.
I mean, 0.
0.
And so she asked last week, how much money have you sent so far? And I have not told her how much I've sent because we keep our businesses separate. She has no part of my business. I have no part of hers. And so she's in the corporate world. She does her thing. Yes, we share a personal bank account, but on a business level, she has no part of my office, no part of it at all, by choice. So I can resent her. I would like for her to be part of it a little bit, but if she doesn't want to, I can't force her into doing that. No different than our children. Can't force your child to play football if they want to play soccer. You understand? Right. And so anyway, so with that, tens of thousands in, that's all I've said to her. And I'm not going to give her any number. And then with that, the business keeps going crazy. The more I keep giving, it's just nuts. Every time I look at my bank account, when I give this morning I gave $1,500. And so, 2 hours later, got verified in the bank account. This was deposited in your account. I'm like, how did I get there? Like every time I give, it gets matched. It's nuts. That's the faith. That's the faith, the mustard seed faith. And so I promise you, it took me a long time, especially after 2003 when I got burned.
Yes.
It took me a long time to have that faith. I got disconnected with God in a bad way for a few years. But again, we all stray, but we got to come back to the principle and the why. And so with that, we're almost done building the house and the school and the church. We're really close. The electric's going in this week. So it's been awesome. It's been a blessing. But again, as men, not everybody has to be interested in what we're interested in. You know what I mean? God will bring the right people at the right time. Christ only had 12 disciples. I promise you, there were more than that approached Jesus, says, I want to join you. And Jesus said, know what? I thank you. Just teach the word, because there were millions of other disciples. Heck, I mean, look what happened. It's still around. We're still talking about it. That's a heck of an MLM, by the way.
Yes.
Right? You want to talk multi-level marketing? That downline is massive, right? And so when I think of that, not everybody has to do the things that we want to do or like to do. And so when God's going to bring the right people at the right time.
It's so funny when you hear that question be thrown out there in a non-faith group and you say, hey man, when we're talking leadership and skills, who's the greatest leader of all time?
Yeah. Right.
And I just wait to hear the answer, because people come up with different things. And
Sure.
if Jesus isn't mentioned, I'm like, hey, what do you think about Jesus possibly being the greatest leader of all time? And throw that out there and see where that conversation goes.
Right.
It's
On a business level, I always throw out, it says, you guys read books. What's your favorite business book or this book or that? I said, do you ever refer the book, the most written, published book ever in history? Have you ever guys reviewed that at all?
in really second place isn't even close.
Not even remotely close. And so I'm like, why aren't there any books on Buddhism? Like Buddha. And you talk about Buddha or Muhammad. Where's they have their book. But outside of that, I'm like, where's the picture? Like I keep a picture of Christ around. We have a picture. Where's a picture of all these other guys? I think of those things. It's not mockery, but again, there was one that started. And I remember when 9/11 went down, right? That's when I lost faith in this country, by the way. But when 9/11 went down, I was just going, I'm going to buy the Quran. So I bought the Quran. And I said, I'm not going to listen to social media. I'm not going to listen to what the news has to say. I'm going to read it for myself. And as I'm reading it, Christ is mentioned. I'm stopping it, by the way.
Yes,
and so I'm flipping through all over the place. And I'm like, wow, Jesus is the Cadillac. Back in the day, like the Cadillac was a ride. So when you get in a car, it says, man, this thing rides like a Cadillac. It's smooth like this. And all they're doing the entire time is comparing Muhammad to the Cadillac, right? And so why not just drive the Cadillac? And so that's why I look at Christ as the Cadillac. It's a cool little story. That's another chapter in the book I'm reading. And so again, when I think about all of the things you're comparing to, it's not what would Jesus do, because you have no idea what Jesus would do. You're not there. But would you, if he was standing next to you, would he have a smile on his face? So when you start scrolling on the internet and looking at things that are inappropriate, would you do it if he's sitting next to you? If you're in traffic and somebody cuts you off and you flip somebody off, would you do that if he was next to you? Your wife aggravates you and your kids are going crazy. You raise your tone and you start saying something that is appropriate. Would you say it was if he's standing next to you? That's how God, that's why I keep the mindset of, I want to put a smile on his face. I want him to go, hey, Eddie, dude, you did good, dude. I'm cool with that, right? And how do you know? Because your spirit talks to you. You know if you're doing right or wrong. You just know, And I think about that whole thing to where playing hide and go seek as a kid. Playing hide and go seek, it's pitch black. Can't see anything in the room, right? You're little and you walk in the room, you're like, dude, I know. Oh, you are so in here. Like, How do you know when somebody's in the room with you? Like, you feel that. What do you feel? That's that thing that you and I share. All of us share that. It's a spirit entity that all of us share. And it's loving, it's nurturing, it's giving. Look at when animals, right? Or even humans, but when an animal dies out in the desert, right? And they're all walking on over and other animals, even their own. A zebra goes to a dead zebra, they're real skittish because there's a disconnect. And I think the connection is of the God in us. And I think when we do good, because we have two brains, one that keeps us alive, the other one we think with, right? But when we just give without any reservation or expectation, all of a sudden you're like, man, what do you think, Christ? He's like, what are you asking me for? I got a smile on my face. I'm good, dude. And so that's how I like to live life. So if you're stuck with something, guys, and you want to have another guy keep you in check with all that, really think about, if I'm logging on in, I promise you, I'm as guilty as you are. We are all human and we all slip, but we can all slip and kind of like, know what? I made an oops. I'm going to go back and I learned from that. I slipped from church for 3 years. I didn't have any God growing up, by the way. I found God with my hands in a dead body doing my first dissection, right, at school. That's how I found God. It's a fun little story. And so when I think about the evolution of how you grow a relationship, I get involved in this church. A patient of mine says, hey, do you know everything you talk about with the body and how it heals and this inside out intelligence that it's written in scripture? And I go, his name's Larry. I'm like, oh no, you're not this holy roller dude, are you? Right? Because I've never been to church. I'm 28, never been to church in my life. Right? Never said the word God. And so I'm like, okay. He's like, no. I'm starting care with you because this totally makes sense. And that's the reason why I actually wrote my first Just Makes Sense. It's because of this conversation with Larry. I'm starting care with you. This makes sense. You, Eddie, are going to church with me. I'm picking you up Sunday. You're going.
Wow.
I'm like, okay. I had no choice. He's like, I'm knocking on your door and you're coming with me. And so he was crazy to all in. He would drag people. You're going. Like, you're going. And so we go to church, right? And it's half black, half white. It's just crazy. People are hugging, high-fiving. There's 80 people on stage in choir. It's nuts. And he's like, woo, 5,000 people, hands in the air, screaming, people flopping on the floor, screaming in tongues. Right? I didn't know what the heck it was then. I'm like, what's going on? He's like, you feel it? Jesus is here. I'm like, where? I want to meet him. Like, where's he at? Right? And so it was just so funny how that evolved. And I really got involved in that church a lot, like way involved. And so I started getting more and more involved and start speaking there and that kind of thing. And Bible groups and the study, I was so all in because it was my first place, right? I meet this guy sitting in the front row. His name's Craig. We became super tight. Craig was on a mission trip, it took state and bodybuilding, jacked, ripped, 3 years in a row. State, and he's on a mission trip, running on the beach with a bunch of kids in Jamaica, I believe it was, and he tripped in a little hole that the kids were making sandcastles, went to go catch himself, hit his chin, snapped his neck. He's paralyzed neck down. Mission trip for church, breaks his neck.
Wow.
And so I said, yeah, unbelievable. So I sit, and he's sitting in the front row in a chair, right? And the church bought the chair and the van for him, the whole nine. And so I sit and I said, dude, we need to talk. I can't imagine how many medicines you're on. You're having some neurologic things. I'm a neurologic doctor. Let's talk. So we started a snowball and moved a bone in his neck. And he drives. He got his doctorate. I mean, it's nuts. It's a fun little story. However, with that, one day he and I are hanging on out, and he just starts F-bombing the pastor. Like hot F-bombing, because he's involved. He's been in the church for years. I'm like, what's going on? Like, what's going on? He's like, remember that little fundraiser that the pastor, he was like this, remember that fundraiser the pastor just did? Church was till midnight. They're passing Tupperware bins over your lap, and people dumping money, wallets, cards, everything in it, raising money for the pastor's son who's in South America building these houses for the people who don't have it. And so everybody's raising money, raised hundreds and hundreds of thousands, tons of money. And so we get home, he's like, he's not building houses. He's in a coke rehab right now in Los Angeles.
Oh my goodness.
I talked to him. I'm best friends with him. I talked to him yesterday. He's in a rehab for doing drugs. And I got bitter. I'm like, whoo, Eddie. And, I'm like, holy cow. I respect this pastor. He kept me on my toes, sharp dude. And so I get asked to speak at an event in Vegas. And so I'm like, man, I'm going to go get a suit made. I really want a nice custom suit. I'm going to go and be on stage for a few hours. So I'm like, no, I'm going to go. And so I get this suit made. I'm with my buddy Craig. I'm like, hey, man, you think Pastor Rob would wear this? And the tailor's like, you know Pastor Rob? It's like, yeah. He'd laugh at your suit. Your suit's $2,500. His suits start at $10,000. He only wears them 3 times because he doesn't like his clothes dry cleaned. Now I'm bitter. Now I really investigate the church and I can talk about it forever. Here's the thing. I left the church for 3 years. Shame on me. You don't go to church for the pastor.
Right.
Wrong move. I didn't know that. That was my first church, guys. Right? But it's an evolution of growth. You learn of that. As I tell a story to you, you can have church in your basement, in your car, in your backyard, in the bathroom, in a bus stop. It doesn't matter. You have church. We, Christ followers, are the body of church, right? So if we're the body of Christ and we are the church, then yes, going to a place where we get led by the pastor. But if you're not getting led, find another place where you are. Because I know I'm speaking to a bunch of guys right now who are just kind of disconnected. We left the current church that we were at for 12 years because the pastor was pushing vaccines as a church, and it just didn't resonate with our family. It's not where you belong. Talk of Christ, please. And so a ton of hundreds and hundreds of families left. And so you find other places that don't speak of that. You just find the right fit, because I'm not the same Eddie that I was last year. Heck, 4 years ago, I didn't have these things.
That's right.
And so, so we evolve. And so as we evolve, it's okay. Yesterday. Yesterday's okay. Because are you living in your yesterday, or are you just going, man, I learned from that. I'm not going to be that guy anymore. I'm going to be this guy. And every day's a new day.
I don't think I've talked about this on the podcast yet, but since you brought up like your church experience, and in that case, the pastor and blaming and everything else, when we're gathered with Christians, Christ is there. Christ is there. When we're gathered in prayer, Christ is there. So I heard this guy, Matthew Kelly, talking a while back, and Matthew says, hey, people that complain about church, you show up and the choir's not so good. The greeters got 3 teeth and breath smells, and the books are old and crusty, and
Right.
on and on and on,
Yeah.
whole laundry list of the
Music's
reasons
awful.
why.
The chairs, it's terrible. Or whatever. Right.
And he goes, so let's peel back. What if you really believe Christ was there? And what if you went to church to get one question answered and you listen for the answer? So at the very beginning of service or before service, hopefully you get there 10 or 15 minutes early and can prepare
Not
a
even
little bit
listen,
and get
but you're
ready.
looking for the answer, right?
Looking, yes, seeking.
Seeking.
Yes, yes. So the question is very, very simple. And I do this every single week. I say, hey, God, this week, can you show me one thing in this mass that'll make me a better version of myself
Sure.
that I need to do this week? I've got my book. I've got this pen that I got in my hand.
Yeah.
And I'm waiting. I'm waiting for that moment of the thing. The last 2 weeks, I'll be darned if I don't say the prayer, sit down, open the book and go, there it is.
Yep.
I hadn't even started yet.
Yeah.
And I've got a message that comes to me and I write it down out of nowhere.
Yeah.
One service, I was leaving and I always look back. I always say goodbye to Christ. I always say goodbye to Jesus. And I'm looking back at him and I go, come on, man. I paid attention this whole service and I didn't write anything down. I didn't get a message.
Yeah.
I take a deep breath and I'm like, I'm so disappointed that you didn't answer my question this week. And I kid you not, I hear, you haven't left yet. Service isn't over yet.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm still paying attention.
Right.
And if I don't hear something in the song that has been playing for a while as I'm walking out the door,
Sure.
that was the thing.
Yeah.
I'd heard it 10 times already, but it didn't register.
Right.
And I heard it in a different way. And I grabbed my book out and I stop. And my wife's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I got to write this down right now. Like, people are running into you. I'm like, it doesn't matter. That's not important right now. What's important is that I write down the thing that I need to write down. If I go out these doors and I start talking to somebody, there's a likelihood that I'm going to forget. So the question is, if you're going to church every week and you believe that God has a likelihood of speaking to you at service, why wouldn't you bring a book and a pen? Why wouldn't you bring some way to record that?
Yes.
But say, hey, we're going to go to lunch together today. Me and you, Eddie.
Yep.
And God's going to talk to us today. Cool, man.
And you invite him in, right?
Yeah.
Invite you into this conversation. Use us. We want to better you. We want to disciple for you. Yeah.
And then we don't bring a book. We don't bring a pen. We don't bring any way to record what and you're like, no, he's not going to talk to us. I'm like, well, right. Okay, then you won't hear him.
Right.
Like you said earlier, I can't, I won't, as opposed to sure. He can.
I can, I will. Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think, how many times have you said, oh, I got to go to Home Depot, or I got to go to a store and go pick this up. And you get in the car to get there. And you're like, oh my gosh. And you buy 5 other things besides the thing you're really supposed to get because you didn't write it down. Right?
Yeah.
That's why a lot of contractors, you see them. I used to build homes before I was a doc. A lot of contractors literally will take and write things on their arm, or they'll take a 2x4 with them, a piece of scrap 2x4, and write on the 2x4 and bring the 2x4 with them, like an eraser in grade school to go to the bathroom.
I've always got the pen and I've always got my left hand. Yep. So if there's no paper around,
I do a bunch with the phone. I'll grab it. I'll dictate my notes. I'm like, oh, hold on. Blah, 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 blah. I get that there. Some way of recording that. Yeah.
Yeah. Text myself, send an email to myself.
Sure.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, when you get the thought, stop, pause, capture it somewhere, whatever that thought is.
And what's so crazy is many times in my life, Dan, when I get that thought, it's not for me. It's for me to share to somebody that's on my, right? That's somebody I know. It's somebody's, I'm like, oh my gosh, so-and-so needs to hear this right now. Right. And so it's so cool. Yeah.
And total side note, if you write it down on a piece of paper, you might lose the piece of paper. And if you have your phone handy, snap a picture of it.
Right.
No, you don't lose it.
Right.
I've lost so many pieces of paper over the years that when it's important, I snap a picture of it so that I've got a backup plan to it.
Go green. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Oh, dude, I'm so thankful to have you with us. And it's so cool to be able to call a doctor dude, by the way.
That's awesome. Well, I appreciate it. I think, my mother calls me Dr. Weller. All of my patients, when they walk on in, I say, hello, my name's Eddie. They're like, well, aren't you Dr. Weller? I says, yeah, that's another name I have. I said, but if this guy, because I have a big colored picture, I have to send it to you,
Yeah.
big colored picture of Christ on the wall. I said, if this guy walks in the door, I'm not introducing myself as Dr. Weller. I promise you. Right? You can call me Eddie. Nobody in scripture, the disciples, do you know their last names? Nope. You know their first names.
Hmm. Hey,
Right?
total side note. What do you call God or Jesus or the Holy Spirit or just any of that stuff
Hmm.
when you're having your conversation?
I usually say Christ. I reverence him. I don't know if I'm worthy enough yet to say his first name. So when you say, "Oh, that's Weller" or "That's Smith," or you say
Yeah,
their
yeah.
last name, because how many times has somebody called you and says, "Hey, Eddie, what's going on?" I'm like, "All right, who are you? I don't recognize this name." "Hey, Dr. Weller." "Oh, hello. What's going on?" See how it's
Yes.
right? It's a different
Yeah,
reverence. It's a
yeah.
respect reverence.
Right.
And so that's to me, it's a respect. When I said, "Hey, man, Christ is," and if I really feel put some guys, or my family, I said, you just put Liam, my son. He always reads a devotional. He's before he goes to bed. And so a lot of guys read devotional mornings day. He goes, I want to end my day talking to Jesus. And I'm like, I'm not going to argue that, dude. And so again, with that Jesus of a 10-year-old saying that, I'm like, let's roll with that. So it's, again, that's how and here's the thing. I don't care what you can call whatever you want to call it. You know what I mean? You can call this a phone. You can call this any name you want to call it. It still doesn't stop its function of what it does. It doesn't
Right.
matter what you call it. And we just give it a title. And I think Christ is the same way. I don't care what you call it. Just follow me.
Yeah,
Take a
yeah,
walk with me.
absolutely. I asked that question just because people that have a personal relationship with Christ, we've
Yeah.
all got our own relationship. It's unique and different and individual. And
Yeah.
not that anybody cares, but sometimes, Christ is right there with me riding shotgun. And I look over, I'm like, hey, man,
Yeah.
here's the thing. I got to talk to you. It's not,
Right.
hey, Holy Lord and Jesus Christ or any of that. It's, hey, man. Hey, dude,
I
can I
gotta
talk to
share
you for a
something.
second?
I gotta share something. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's so
yeah.
weird. I'm gonna share something. I've never shared this, Dan. I've never, ever, ever shared this. He's like, oh boy, what are we gonna talk about? So I was driving in the car and I'm by myself. And I was like, throat's weird. And I've got a Jeep, the top's down. So I'm like, oh, yuck, right? I gotta get rid of this thing by myself. So I go, I could I couldn't spit up. I had to spit sideways. I'm like, I did it one time. I'm like, man, I look up to the sky for life and God and health and abundance, and now I just spit. Yes, it's a symbolic thing. It's a weird thing, but spit is demeaning, right?
Demeaning, very demeaning.
Very demeaning. I mean, you spit in somebody's face, it's pretty demeaning.
I
So
don't know if
I
you remember
never,
that NFL thing.
no.
I think it was Romanowski spitting that guy's face,
Oh,
and all heck broke loose.
yes. It is worse than any name, and it's worse than a punch or kick in the shorts, right? It's
Yeah.
just demeaning. And so my daughter has never seen me spit. I mean, so we just even playing sports, I just don't do that. It's just I don't. Um, and that's the example I want to lead. I want my daughter to marry somebody like me.
So you cut a bunch of
I do.
junk in your throat, you're clearing it out, you're all by yourself, and you go to spit
Right.
out of the top of your Jeep as you're cruising along. I know how that is with the top, the Jeep. I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
it's
It's
super
easy.
cool. But instead, you're like, no, I can't do that
Well,
because
and I caught it. I'm like, I can't do this right now. And I'm by myself. The last week I went for a cruise. And my wife's like, where are you going? I go, out. I want you to come with me. And she goes, where? I says, I'm going for a drive. And she's like, where are you going to end up? I go, right here where I'm at. She's like, we're already here. I'm like, you can get out. Go. You're not ruining my moment. I'm going for a drive. It's beautiful outside. Stars are glowing. I'm going to go hang out and talk to God and just go for a cruise. I'm gone for 3.5 hours. 3.5 hours, man. I went to the wineries. I ended up in Washington. I drove everywhere. I'm up and over. I'm just driving and just hanging out. And I didn't care where I was driving. I was just watching the needle in my gas because I can only get 14 miles at a gallon anyway. Right. So I'm watching the needle go down. I'm like, it's time to get gas. I'm going home. And I went home. It was midnight. Sometimes, it doesn't matter. Sometimes it's just about you and your relationship. And it's something as simple as your wife not wanting to come with you, or if you spitting out of the window, everything has a meaning. And so if you want to give it meaning in a negative fashion, or you want to give reverence and respect to it, I choose respect to it, because there's dudes in prison making crosses because they found Christ. Heck, there's a guy at my Bible study did not know Christ until he committed a felony. right? God uses you in the weirdest way. He goes, I found God behind bars, man. I found God with my hands in a dead body. You're going to find, I mean, you're just going to find your own path. And it's your, going back to the beginning of this, it's your story. And
It
nobody
is.
can
It
take it from
is.
you. It's your story.
Hey,
And I think
quick.
when you share that story, it's really, really cool. You know,
It
so
is. It is. Yeah, having that signature story to pass
ah,
along to somebody else and encourage them. So you brought up the Jeep thing. Quick side note: this one's a practical thing that you can do as a man to have a better relationship with your wife.
okay.
We all have trouble communicating as men face to face with our wife, looking at her. She's looking at you,
Right.
kind of an adversarial type thing. You mentioned the love seat, pretty good place to have a chill conversation. You're
Yeah.
side by side, shoulder to shoulder. Another great place to have a conversation like that or to just have fun is out on a drive.
Yeah.
Where are you going? So we had this day planned all
To
out.
your point, real quick, it's non-confrontational because you're both facing this way,
Yes. Yeah, your
right?
teammates. Yeah, your
Yeah,
teammates.
yeah, yeah.
So there was a sand volleyball thing, and it was going to take maybe 3, 4, 5 hours or what have you. And we realized a couple hours, like there was going to be a couple hour gap where we weren't all that critical to what was happening. Our kids were there, my parents were there, family, and all that. I'm like, hey, would it be all right if we just took off for a little bit
Yeah.
and we'll come back? And like, what are you going to do? We're like, we're going to have a day date. I'm like, where are you going to go? I don't know, but we have a
Wherever.
Jeep. And we turned out we just drove around to places we hadn't been, and we just drove and just had a great time and just goofed off like kids again in high school, that if we had a Jeep back then, we just had fun. So
Right.
total blast.
Yeah.
On a different day, we were riding in the Jeep. We knew it was going to take about an hour to get there, and I had a topic I wanted to talk about. And so I actually had questions prepared. I had a speech in my
Yeah.
mind,
Yeah.
but different paths. So wherever the conversation went, I was already prepared and ready for it. But we're on this ride. I say, hey, I would like to talk to you about a certain thing. Here's the topic. Would it be all right if we jumped in? And I laid out my little thing. Anyway, being in a vehicle side by side, you can have lots of fun, or you can also have great conversation
Yeah.
because you're both looking out the windshield. You're both going the same direction. Teammates go the same direction. You
Yes.
go to the destination together. So anyway, total side note, but
To add to that real quick, if she's driving, that conversation. If you're going to have a topic, man, that you want to address, you can drive and have that conversation because you're leading that conversation. However, if you're sitting in the passenger seat and now you want to have a talk, it's not going to work because she's driving, she's concentrated. Wrote, yeah, I know. What about this? I don't want my wife to get upset if she does. Well, she's driving. Yeah, no, not good.
that is true. That is true. We
Yeah.
definitely don't want an emotional wife driving for
No, no,
sure.
no, no.
Yeah, yeah. And for that matter, don't you either, guys. Don't
Sure,
be
sure.
emotional yourself while you're driving.
Yeah.
Don't injure anybody. But yeah, I've just found those vehicle conversations, if you've got 30 minutes, an hour, or driving on a long road trip, like do something with that time productive.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I agree. I really enjoy a nice glass of wine or a nice cup of coffee. I'm a little bit of a snob on both of those. So I'll spend a little extra because I know I'm getting quality. Um, and so it's just my gig, right? So I sit outside and I'd like, hey, want to join me for a glass of wine? Half glass. Let's just sit on the patio and just kind of talk. One of the things that I enjoy doing is I have a jacuzzi. And so it's 6 in the morning or at night, midnight. I like going in the jacuzzi. It's pitch black in the backyard in the neighborhood, right? And I'll jump in the jacuzzi. I'm like, hey, you want to go? She's never been. We've had the jacuzzi 5 months. She's been in one time with the kids. And so you're just like, oh gosh, let's have some fun. Let's hang out. Let's talk. Be in the bubble, whatever. Again, some things, including our spouses, are not going to want to do the same things that you want to do. And and that's hard not to have a resentment. And you just ask God, what do you want right now? I think, I'm not a fan of divorce, but sometimes the line is so far drawn where you're stuck. What do? You go to God with it and says, oh, God, how do you become the center of this? Because in scripture it reads, Jesus says, I'm the bride. That is one word, bride. Why is that? Because I am the link between the both of you. I am the bride and the groom. You put me in the center of this relationship, it's going to work. And if there isn't one, then one is moving further away in the relationship because one's following with God and the other one just says, it's your thing. And now there's that, right? So this is why you have to surround yourself with others that just go, dude, I know where you're at right now. Let's talk about how you can get back on track with her. And so again, I'm not pointing fingers at any women or any men right now. We're all dealing with our own stuff. And so, you can hold on to that painful thing, or you can say, I'm going to find a solution. I got God by my side. I'm going to figure this out. So it's,
Yeah, absolutely. So guys, do what you can do. Put Christ at the center of your relationship. Talk to your wife about it. Own the outcomes that you can control.
yeah,
And the outcomes that you cannot control, those aren't for you to control. So don't own that.
sure.
Own what you can, and what you can't, you can't.
Right. And that's why you never say, why me? Why me? It says, all right, now you're having me endure this. I want to know why, so I can help others.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So you make it more about them versus you.
And if you
so
go to why me, guys, give yourself a time limit.
Right. Yeah.
5 minutes, whatever time limit you give yourself. Fine. You want to be in that space? Take as much time as you
We're
want.
all there.
But put a limit on it. And then switch to maybe a how might we?
Yeah.
Or what's the best way? Or you mentioned the praise, the
praise, correction, praise.
Yeah. So what
even do that yourself, Have you ever written, a cool little exercise, guys, write your own eulogy.
Yes.
You ever try that? It's tough. It is hard.
So talking about the eulogy, I thought about that, and for years I couldn't do it because I kept thinking of things of the earth, resume type things.
Yeah.
And it made me angry. I'm like, the resume things aren't what I care about.
Because it made you angry because maybe there's an expectation for yourself that you thought you would be further along. I mean, I'm knocking on the door.
No, not further along. I'm writing down accomplishments. Here are things that people are going to say about me. He was this, he was that, he was professional this, he was professional that. Went to a funeral the other day, and the guy was a veteran chopper pilot that got shot down a couple of times. Wow. The only thing people said about this guy was that he got shot down a couple of times and that he helped save a bunch of people and did all this stuff for the military. And I said, that's fantastic. I didn't hear God. I didn't hear great husband. I didn't hear great dad. I didn't hear any of that. And then
you lived many other years besides getting shot down, right?
A whole lot of years.
And
it pivoted for me when I hear them talking about my honor, respect, and love for my wife, when I hear how that impacted her, when I hear how my daughters developed and where they are and who they married, and then the grandkids, all of a sudden, all this joy and my eulogy just flowed out. And it didn't say anything about what I do for a living. It didn't say anything about how I made money. It didn't say anything about earthly stuff. Right. It had everything to do with core values that are essential to me, and how the legacy got passed on to my kids, friends, family, people that I influenced over the years. So all of a sudden, I was like, I love this exercise.
Yeah, right.
But the way the person framed it.
Well, you didn't make it initially, you made it about you, and then you start making it about others.
The person that was leading that exercise framed it that way, where I was trapped in that box thinking. And every time the exercise came up, I'm like, this is so stupid. I can't stand it.
Yeah.
Because I was coming up with the same outcomes, the same answers. And then one day, it all shifted for me. So.
And and again, there's the comparison thing, of course. Like, I don't live in a house like they do. I don't drive like they do. But how many other things? Quick story, and then we can, and then whatever. But forever, this is like the view. A good friend of mine growing up, his father was never home, and his father was always at the bar down the block in Chicago at a tavern, always at the bar. He had another sister, a younger sister, and mom would stay home, and mom would work, right? They'd go to school, but dad was never home. Dad would go to work, drop off his check, leave, and go sit at the bar. That's it. That's all he knew of his dad, period. Dad dies. So he shows up at the funeral, and he can't find where his family's at, because there are thousands, literally filled the entire blocks in Chicago of people that came for this guy's funeral. And he's like, am I at the right place right now? And he goes up to the front and says, oh, you're so-and-so's son. You're so-and-so's son. And so he had such a disconnect with his wife that he didn't believe in divorce, that he went to the bar to bring people joy and happiness to get them away from their misery. And he took care of all these people, and he took care of this family, and this wife came on over, and this widow came on over, and this kid, and he was a dad to hundreds. But see the perception? He had a perception of what he thought his dad was doing, but what was his dad really doing? You know, case in point, people have perceptions about us, about what we do and how we do things and what, and they have an expectation with that perception. Is that you pleasing others, or is that you going to please God? This guy just wanted to go please others and put a smile on God's face. Yes, he didn't take care of his initial financially, he did, but no other means. He did his thing because there was a disconnect with him and his wife. That was just how he did his thing. How you do your thing is your thing, but when you're putting others first with your thing, your gift, you put a smile on his face.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
Absolutely.
Cool. And now the eulogy becomes really easy because you think about all the different things and how I want to add to people's lives. I mean, heck, there are kids no longer in slavery because of a gift that God's given me to make money, and I can purchase these kids. And now I'm building a home for them.
Chalktoclay.com.
Yeah, it's called the Agape Home, right? That's just how it works. Yeah, so it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
Have you got anything else you want to add? And then I always ask everybody that comes on to throw a challenge out to the guys also. So I'll open it up to you to add anything you want for Christian dads or guys that have questions about being Christian dads, and then also throw a challenge out to them.
I do this. I don't do it frequently, so there's an expectation. You know, I'm a huge fan of an unexpected gift at an unexpected time is the way to win your wife over. An unexpected gift at an unexpected time. I don't do Hallmark holidays. I met her online, so I told her I don't do Hallmark holidays when this is Sweetest Day or this is Valentine's Day. I don't do that because there's an expectation for me that day. If I need one day to remind you of how much I love you, just the one day, we have a problem.
Yes.
And so I challenge you guys that when your wife is sleeping, odds are your wife goes to bed before you do. Your wife is sleeping. I want you to take the covers and fold them up at the foot of the bed and get a little lotion on your hands and massage her feet while she's sleeping. Do that. Because here's the thing. If you were dating, you would do those things. You know, people say date your wife. Write down the top 10 things that you want in a relationship, and whatever you want, do it to them first.
So let's go all over to Dr. Eddie's. We'll go over about 12:30. He's asleep at that time. We'll get some lotion. We'll massage his feet.
You know,
I'll connect with his wife, so she'll let us in.
Yeah. Problem is that I'm up later than everybody else. I promise you. So I heard once, if you want money, give it. If you want time, give it. If you want love, give it. And so if you want something first, don't wait for it. Be that thing. Gandhi hit the nail on the head with that, right? Be the change in the world. If you want to change in your world, then you have to be that thing. I love touch and communication and that kind of thing. So my wife isn't that person. So I'm going to give her touch. I want to give her communication. And so that's something I challenge you guys. Or maybe it doesn't have to be a foot massage. It could be an unexpected gift at an unexpected time. Surprise her with this thing. When's the last time you sent your wife flowers? Seriously.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not saying you, man.
I remember I did that, and it was either 2020 or 2021 with COVID. It's all the same year.
Right.
But I did that because I wanted to break up the routine of what it was. Yeah.
Break up the monotony, just the little things. And, you know, the other day, I get in her car and she does not, I used to own a boat and car detailing company. And so I'm particular about my cars, and my cars are always clean, and hers are not. She's got suckers stuck to the seat, wrappers and stuff everywhere. And so she's out doing some things at work, whatever. And she went to the gym. She took another car. She walked. And so I took her car and I detailed her car, cleaned it, polished it, got it all clean, filled the gas tank. Everything's done. Shut it all down, put the keys on the counter, and that was it. She gets in her car, didn't say anything. Day 1, day 2, day 3. It wasn't until my son got a ride to go into a sports thing, golf thing, says, "Wow, Mom, your car is clean." She's like, "Well, yeah. Sometimes they're not going to notice the things that we notice, guys. And it's tough for me because I notice everything. And so she doesn't. And again, it's just that gift. We work out, we go to this place, and you stand on this vibration plate. And she's like, I'd really like to have one of those. That'd be cool to have at home. I'm like, they're great for you. They're healthy. They do this,
Yeah.
they do that. I'm like, oh, okay, that's cool. We'll look into it. That night I bought one and I put it in the, and 2 days later, it's in the basement. And so we're sitting down and so in the house, I'm like, hey, I got a little something downstairs. She goes, what? She goes, I said, go check it out. So she goes downstairs. Oh my gosh, what's going on? It doesn't have to, there was a little pricey, but it doesn't have to be an expensive gift. It could be something to fill up her gas tank and clean her car, because you would do it when she was dating. Cool story my mother had growing up. There was this guy that she dated, and when they called her on up and they went on a date on Friday nights, this is pre-marriage, went on a date on Friday night, he would call her up and says, what dress are you wearing? And she's like, oh, well, I guess I'm gonna wear this color. Cool. He would rent a car with that color dress to match her color dress. Smooth. I'm like, who is this dude right now? Right? And just a cool move. But again, it's that extra something. If you're that extra something, they're always going to want to be like, that's my guy. That's my guy.
Yes.
You know, I can't tell you how many of her girlfriends get together and they chit chat and all the guys come on over, we talk, because I don't really hang out with those guys a bunch. And so they come on over and says, would you stop? All the girls were talking about all the crap that you're doing for your wife. You're making me look bad. I'm like, no. You better get on your A game, dude. Because I have this belief, gentlemen, if I don't take care of my wife, somebody else will.
Yep. They might do it temporarily, but they will.
And that's how the enemy gets in the middle of your relationship in a hurry.
Yeah, it gets those thoughts wandering.
So therefore, I always want to be on my A game, and I am.
Yeah, and pursue your wife. Pursue your wife. Pursue her heart.
Pursue her.
There's a book out there called Giftology by John Ruhlin.
Huh. Okay.
At some point, John will be on the podcast. Fantastic guy. I love him to death. But he mentioned that same thing. That's what the book is about, is giving fantastic gifts at random, unexpected times that catch people right in the heart. Sure. And it's all about them and not about you at all. So kind of your challenge is kind of that same thing.
It is.
Fine.
I have got a company that there's a few companies. I've got a company that's being acquired, purchased the company that I've started. And so with that, we're talking about a business deal, and this guy is killing it financially. And he's holding like a big pen. I'm like, wow, okay. Because I usually go to deals with a nice pen,
Yes.
I come up with a Mont Blanc, and I show up with a nice pen. I'm not signing. The president doesn't sign something with a Bic, right? I promise you, right? There's a reason for that. So today is what I'm going to do. There's some big things happening tomorrow. And so I am getting online right after this, and I am purchasing a nice pen for him to show up at the deal, and I'm going to mail it to him, and it'll open up. I says, it's great doing business with you, right? The unexpected time. It impresses everybody because it would impress you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. So do something unexpected for your wife that she'd just die for, whatever that might be.
Doesn't matter. What if? It could be anything. You know what I mean? So I was at the mall. I drove by the mall and I got $100 gift card to Macy's. Hey, why don't you go shop and go buy something fun? I don't care. Something, that simple is the fact that you thought about them when in your busy life sets the tone for the relationship. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, that's a fantastic challenge. I love it. It fits in perfect with the 30-day challenge that we're doing right now.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. I appreciate you always. And I appreciate you also coming on the podcast as well. Check out chalk2clay.com if you want to see more of what Dr. Eddie is doing.
Yeah.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, man. Thank you, guys. Keep on being you guys.
All right. God bless you guys.
Bye-bye.